Welcome to the City of Durango City Council regular meeting for February 15th, 2022. The time is 5:33. May we have a roll call, please?
Councilor Bosmans.
Present.
Councilor Buell.
Here.
Councilor Youssef.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy.
Present.
Mayor Baxter.
Present. Thank you, Amy. May we have the introduction of the translator, please?
Mayor, tonight we have Maria to make the introduction.
Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you so much for the space. Good evening, everybody. My name is Maria Elisa Fuller, and I am part of a very committed group of individuals whose mission is to create a pragmatic attitudes towards diversity. We focus our efforts in creating safe spaces for all individuals while we rally for language justice. We're committed to creating spaces that allow each individual the right to communicate in what we call their heart language. By doing so, we are confident to envision real conversations whose outcomes can benefit all its participants. We will be using simultaneous interpretation to create this space today. When I finish saying this in Spanish, we will turn on interpretation and you will see a globe icon in the bottom of your screen. If you are fully bilingual, please make sure you choose the channel that you prefer. Otherwise, you can just do English or Spanish and just mute the original audio so you don't have to be in both channels and thus create confusion. Buenas tardes, mi nombre es María Elisa Fuller, soy parte de un grupo muy comprometido de individuos cuya misión es generar una actitud pragmática hacia la diversidad. Centramos nuestros esfuerzos en crear espacios seguros para todas las personas mientras nos movilizamos a favor de la justicia lingüística. Estaremos comprometidos a crear espacios que permitan a cada individuo el derecho a comunicarse y expresarse en lo que llamamos su lenguaje de corazón. Al hacerlo, estamos seguros de visualizar conversaciones reales cuyos resultados puedan ser de beneficio a todos los participantes. Utilizaremos la interpretación simultánea para crear este espacio el día de hoy. Cuando termine de decir esto en español, activaremos la interpretación. Y usted verá un icono de globo terráqueo en la parte inferior de su pantalla. Puede escoger el canal de su preferencia, sea inglés o español. Lo que sí sugiero es que, por favor, ponga silenciar el audio original para que no haya confusión. I think that is all I have to say. I do just remind participants and panelists to just space yourself, especially if you're reading materials from the screen, just so we can provide the best interpretation that we can have. Thank you so much for the space and have a great meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. We appreciate your help. Are there any actual or perceived conflicts of interest for council on today's meeting agenda items? Nope. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on then. So we're moving on to public participation. And I think we're completely virtual today. Is that correct? There's no one in the city council rooms?
No one in council.
Wonderful. So we have two people right now in the waiting room to speak, and the first one is the phone number. So Tom, if you would let her in, that would be wonderful.
I'm sorry to interrupt. My apologies. I don't believe I have been assigned as an interpreter just yet.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Sorry.
Thank you. Mayor just requesting technical support to be assigned as interpreter.
Oh, okay.
Sorry to interrupt. Thank you so much.
No,
Sorry.
that's okay. That's fine.
You should see it now.
Okay. Excellent. Yeah, it says on my screen, English and Spanish interpretation available. That's awesome. All righty. Tom, do you want to go ahead and let Ms. Marbury in, please?
Yeah, sweetie, you should be able to hear us if you want to go ahead and use your 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Sweetie Marbury. I've been a Durango resident for about 47 years. And when listening to the February 3rd City Council meeting, I really appreciate Ms. Baker's water update. I agree with her. We have an excellent staff. But what I was shocked about was hearing about the water break on December 27th on the Florida, and just now hearing about it in February. I heard her say that they pumped 46 million gallons out of the Animas into the reservoir, and that we're dealing with a 1950s reservoir and pipes. And so what is really disappointing to me about your city council is that the lack of understanding of the severe water issues that we're in. When one says mega drought, we're living it, look outside. There's no money in any of your budgets for any designs of pipe to get water out of Night Horse. And the city council, long before any of you ever lived in Durango, put money in so that we would have a future of getting water out of Night Horse. It takes years to design pipes. Even if you started tomorrow, it would take years. So my questions concern why cut water revenue sources when dealing with infrastructure that's about 72 years old? My next comment concerns, I listened to the study session, and I want to thank Councilor Bosman for bringing up the city logo. I believe it's also a waste of money because Durango was here, we were established in the 1880s by the train, and the logo, to me, is the train. Councilor Noseworthy said that it was a previous city council in 2019. So I spoke with Mayor Dean Brookie, and he said no, there was never any reason to redesign the city logo, that they were talking about finding an iconic event or a structure, but not redesigning the logo. And I'm very concerned about that because I also believe in public input. Someone mentioned a number of emails. I have a feeling those emails were saying, don't change the logo and don't get rid of the train. So I'm looking forward to public input, even more public input concerning the logo and keeping the train in our beautiful mountains to represent the city of Durango. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sweetie. We have another person in the waiting room, Karen Pontius.
We do, sorry. All right, Karen, you should be able to hear us, and you've got 3 minutes for public comment.
Hi, my name is Karen Pontius. I live on Animas View Drive in Durango. I usually take up all my 3 minutes, but I won't this time. I'm calling with 4 items of support. And the first one is, I want to just support in general our city council. I'm so amazed at all the things you managed to fit into your lives. So just know that there's a lot of support out here for you guys. The second thing is, I might as well weigh in and say I totally agree with Sweetie. I hadn't attended any of the water things, but she raises some good points. And then about the logo too, I didn't know we were thinking about changing the logo, but if not, I like it. The second thing is I support the Best Western acquisition, and I saw that on the agenda tonight. So I don't know if you need community support for that or if you're past that point, but I hope that happens. I was under the impression you'd be talking about a pedestrian mall tonight. I put that in my phone, so I've been in different cities that have pedestrian malls, and it works wonderful. The smallest town I know is Charlottesville, Virginia, has a great pedestrian mall and works really well. And I do hope that happens for Durango. I brought it up a couple years ago with some friends, and they said, no, it has to be a really big town to support that. And I'm like, well, I don't know about that. So I'm in support of a pedestrian mall. And the last thing I'll say is I'm in support of any help that anyone can give to West Side Mobile Home Park, which is now in the process of thinking of becoming a co-op and buying their own land. I know the county's involved, but if the city's involved at all, kudos to y'all. And this is going to be a project that we at Animas View Mobile Home Park Co-op are watching and hoping that we can get a lot of support for. So thank you very much.
Thank
I
you,
almost
Karen.
used my 3 minutes.
It's fine. We appreciate it. Thank you. I think Werner Hyber's in the waiting room.
Okay. Yes, I am in the waiting room. Okay. Now I'm not anymore.
That's right.
Comment about tributes. And I'm making these as a resident tributes and as an engaged citizen, not representing tributes in any way. My comment is a story of preventing 4 million pounds of carbon dioxide while saving about $2 million and how sustainability, affordability, and environmental stewardships are interconnected in all of our city goals. They're all in our city goals, but they're interconnected. So I have been involved with Tribute since its beginning. It's its intention to be a sustainable development. I attended all city council meetings, and after approval wrote the first sustainability update as then required by the city. I also managed the farm in its second year. 5 years ago, we purchased a lot, built a net zero energy house moving in almost 4 years ago. We are actually the first people living here. After moving in, I was surprised at the extensive infrastructure and amount of concrete used, which is drastically different from other hilly or mountainous developments like Edgemont, Rockridge, or Rafter J. Because the Lightner Creek Trail, which presently consists of a road base, that's a trail that goes back from the float trail to the parking lot, is supposed to be, so that trail, based on plans, is supposed to be paved in concrete. So I first talked to Jose Madrigal more than a year ago, and following his recommendation, I exchanged email messages with Nicole Killian, outlining my concerns about using concrete for the trail and less concrete, and also other Twin Buttes projects. A couple of months ago, I was told that that 1.1 mile long trail is supposed to be paved in 2022, which is this year, which is triggered by Twin Buttes Wild Chive subdivision. Because the fabrication of Portland cement is responsible for 8% of global carbon dioxide generation. The concrete used for that trail would generate the 4 million pounds or 2,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide from the production of the needed cement. But that does not include the rebar, construction exhausts, and other sources. I got these numbers also confirmed by Dan Burkhardt. Early last month, I emailed and also shared my concerns with Scott McLean from Parks and Rec, asking that the natural surface trail should be maintained. This could be a crushed rock trail. Since this is a sustainability issue, I also let Marty Poole know. So I really tried to get everybody involved or informed. To come back to the beginning, this is a great example of how sustainability, affordability, and environmental stewardship interconnect. First, considering the amount of carbon dioxide generated, concrete should not be used. Second, the almost $3 million to lay down concrete will be paid by Twin Buttes residents, not the developer. It's simply...
I'm sorry, your 3 minutes are up. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
I have very...
Tom, I don't see anyone else in the waiting room for public comment.
That's correct, Mayor.
If there's anyone else who wanted to make a public comment, please go ahead and raise your hand. All right, seeing none, we will move on with the meeting then. Thank you very much, everyone, for your comments. At this point, we're moving to agenda item 6, which is executive session. There's a need for the City Council to meet in an executive session to discuss potential purchase, acquisition, lease, transfer, or sale of real and property within the City of Durango as permitted in CRS 24-6-4024A, and to discuss positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, or instructing negotiators as permitted in CRS 24-6-4024E, specifically involving real property owned by GRVP LLC in Three Springs. State law requires that 2/3 of the quorum present must vote in the affirmative in order to convene an executive session. Is there a motion to do so?
I'll move to go into executive session for the purposes stated.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? May we have a vote, please?
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy?
Yes.
Councilor Bosmans?
Yes.
Councilor Buell?
Yes.
Mayor Baxter?
Yes. We'll see you all in executive session, and we will return after that is over to this session. Welcome, everyone. I reconvene this meeting at 6:16 p.m. For the record, council met an executive
Recording
session
in progress.
to discuss potential purchase, acquisition, lease, transfer, or sale of real property within the city of Durango as permitted in CRS 24-6-402-4A, and to discuss positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, or instructing negotiators as permitted in CRS 24-6-402-4E, specifically involving real property owned by GRVP LLC in Three Springs. No decisions were made. If anyone who participated in the executive session believes the discussion went beyond the proper scope of the executive session, please state your objections now. Seeing none, our next item is city operational updates. Jose?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just a few updates just to provide out. First one is the library installed a story walk that places a children's story along an outdoor route that leads to the library front doors. Stories will be rotated throughout the year. Each display will soon include Braille and Spanish translations. The story walk begins at the corner of East 20th Street and East 3rd Avenue. Also, Frontier Airlines announced it will cancel its twice weekly nonstop flights to Las Vegas. However, the good news is the airline will continue to offer twice weekly flights to Denver. The city is hosting a virtual meeting from Wednesday, February 16th from 5:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. on 4 design concepts for downtown Maine Avenue. This is an effort to shape a vision for the streets and public spaces, including patios, sidewalks, landscaping, bicycle facilities, vehicle lanes, and parking crosswalks. Public comment will be taken at the meeting and through an online questionnaire available Friday, February 18th. For more information, the public can go to durangogov.org/downtown Maine. The Regional Housing Alliance is looking for a member-at-large position for its board of directors. For the public considering this role, the Alliance is a recently revived effort among the city, county, Ignacio, and Bayfield to address the housing needs locally. The application for this position is on the city's website or the Southwest Colorado Council of Governments website at www.swccog.org. And finally, the city's website is now available in 108 languages through Google Translate. Previously, this service was offered through individual browser settings, but the service is now hard-coded into the city's website, and very appreciative of the media and community engagements team work on that. And with that, Mayor, we are ready for the economic outlook presentation by Ms. Laura Lewis-Marchino with Region 9.
Wonderful. Laura, welcome. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me all right?
We certainly can. Thank you.
Great. I'm hoping that my audio will be good. I apologize. I didn't think to bring home all my super duper audio stuff at home. So we will hope for the best. I do have a presentation that I will put on the screen. Okay. Let me do that. Thank you so much. I so appreciate the opportunity to present to you tonight. What I'll be talking about is really economic trends that we're seeing and how we've been recovering from COVID. I did make this presentation, most of this to the Alliance and also at the Southwest Economic Forum. I'm taking a more regional approach because with Durango being the largest city, the decisions and impacts that you have definitely affect the region and how there's just a lot of interplay between the workforce in Durango and the rest of the region. So I will go through this as quickly as possible. Please know that we do have on our website, I can send this to you, and I have other data I can refer you to if you have specific questions. So my presentation is going to revolve around the elephant in the room, so to speak, which is that we're all having birthdays and we're all getting older, and that is affecting everything in our trends, including the economy, housing, all the things that are important to you, and even affordability. And then you'll see there's a link at the bottom of this screen. I just want you to know there's specific Durango data on our dashboard, which is on our website, that you're all welcome to look at your leisure. So this first slide is basically our employment over time. In Region 9, you'll see that the counties are color-coded. The Great Recession really impacted our economy. And you'll see that we had our lowest job numbers in 2010. And we saw another dip, obviously, with COVID in 2020, but not as low. So that was good news in that respect. And then you'll see that the projected numbers are that we'll continue to grow at the same steady rate. So whatever you hear about unprecedented growth, we are not seeing it. So many of you can take a sigh of relief. We have our employment by industry and wage. And I put 2021 numbers where I could, just so you know, but being early in the year, a lot of that data has not yet been compiled, but I will be comparing 2020 and 2019 so you can see the impacts of COVID. So these are the wage sectors that any business, they pick their NAICS code for their tax return, and this is how they're categorized. You see low to high wage jobs. Government apparently is a high wage job. You never thought that, but in our region it is, and government has the most amount of jobs, and that also includes, of course, public lands, federal jobs, National Park Service. So it's not all your state and local government. And then we have obviously retail sales, food services, and then you'll see that mining, information, and utilities, some of our highest paying job sectors, actually have some of the smallest numbers. Then in this slide, it's showing those same job sectors, but comparing 2019 to 2020. And what you'll see with the kind of the rainbow or waterfall on top is the number of jobs lost in that 1 year from COVID over all of these industries. And it is again by region. And you'll see that we actually gained jobs in agriculture, but everything else lost jobs. Probably no surprise to you in terms of the where we lost jobs. So a quick economy lesson, because it'll relate to all the things I'll be talking about moving forward. Think of the yellow as your Durango, the city of Durango, and money comes into Durango through a variety of methods, such as through tourism, they bring dollars, exports of goods and services, so Stone Age tools or Tailwind Nutrition, they sell products outside of the community, and that money comes back in. There's also dividends, interest, and rent, which is all of our savings, our stocks, that kind of thing. Transfer payments or retirement payments. They all come into our economy and circle around. And the indirect base category is directly related to the money coming into our economy. So, for example, hotels would be directly related to tourism. So if we lose money coming into the economy, that sector or those jobs are lost. And then residential services include all the other jobs like school teachers, retail, law enforcement. Those are kind of our quality of life jobs, and I'll talk more about that. And then, of course, we have money leaking out. Anytime you shop in Farmington, you all know the drill. And the thing is, you have to make sure there's more money coming into your economy than leaving. So you don't necessarily have to grow, but you have to make sure that you're compacting or reducing the amount of leakage that you have in your economy. So this is our economy, Region 9, and the green is that direct base, that money coming into our region. So 68% of our economy is new money coming in, and that's good. That's a healthy economy. We have 11%, which are the indirect, directly related jobs that I mentioned. So that could also be John Deere, for the agriculture industry kind of thing. Local residential services are your most important sector. And that's one thing I want to get across to you all is that is the quality of life piece of our economy. And that's the one that gets most impacted by affordability issues, housing, and I'll talk more about that. But that's your retail shops, your small businesses, your teachers, your firefighters, that type of thing. And in 1 year from 19 to 20, it actually dropped 2 percentage points, probably due to COVID. But just so you know, that is the piece that we really need to try to preserve when we're making decisions. This is what the direct base looks like. So that 68%, this is showing between 2019 and 2020, what is in that category. And you'll see there wasn't a lot of change. Tourism went down a little. Households went up. Households is kind of a catch-all. So it includes retirees. It includes subsidies like social security. I'm trying to think. Payments, TANF, that type of thing. And I think the others are pretty self-explanatory. But regional services are ones that are industries that are not contained to one county. So Fort Lewis College or say the hospital would fit in that category. This is the breakdown by county. So it's those same industries broken down. And you'll see that La Plata County only really has 21,000 jobs. So that's one reason we try not to break it down into just Durango, because I think you lose part of that picture. But you'll see households, which means retirees is your biggest percentage of jobs. And then in San Juan, it is tourism. And then you can see the comparison from kind of our COVID years. Now I want to talk about money. This one I find really interesting. So this is all the money that you earn, I earn, that's all put together and lumped in. This top one is transfer payments. So that's your retirees. And as you can see, La Plata actually has a smaller percentage than some of the other counties. Then you have your money. We have more money than some of the other counties, in your savings or your portfolios. And then we have residency adjustments, which I'll talk about. And then we have employment. So what I want to note here is that less than half of all of our money is coming from jobs. So you can see when we talk about not having enough workforce, this is really why. So residency adjustments are something that La Plata County and Durango really need to consider. This measures your commuters. So what you see at the bottom of La Plata is there's a -1. What this means is that you have more people, say, coming into La Plata County to work, and they're taking that money out of the La Plata County economy to the detriment of La Plata County. So you basically have more people coming into work and taking money out than you have people in the county that are working, if that makes sense. So when you look at Montezuma, you see the reverse. They have people that live in Montezuma that work in La Plata. They take that money home, and Montezuma is gaining that benefit because they're getting more money than what they're providing through their employment. Okay, oops. And transfer payments are to 65 plus. This one shows the trends. Oops, sorry. So the trends look over time. This is 1970, 80, 90, 2000, and you see that employment has declined. So the money coming into our region, it doesn't necessarily mean less jobs. It means money coming from more and more retirees. And then the last two columns you'll see is just 1 year. So I have 19 and 20. And look at that difference in just the number of transfer payments and retirees coming to the area. So we're seeing more retirees than we are remote workers. And then you can see that we had a lot of money in 2019 compared to 2020. Some of that people believe is actually our stimulus checks, because if we didn't need that money, we saved it. Now I want to talk about aging. So on this chart, this is for all of Colorado. The blue line is natural births and deaths. So how many people are being born and dying every year? And you'll see we have a dip, obviously, around COVID. And then the projection is that will continue to grow a little bit and then kind of decline off. The red is people migrating into Colorado. So you see that is just, it is not consistent. You see the dip in 2020. They expect that that'll recover somewhat and then continue to decline. The reasons for the continued decline in forecasts is that we are not affordable compared to other states. So we're starting to be a little too expensive, and obviously housing may play a role. But you can see, we weren't consistent. Now this is our region. So this is the population cohort, so to speak. So when you look at this, you see that we're not having as many babies. Even with being locked in our house for 2 years or a year, we didn't make babies. So whatever that says. And then you see that we have our Gen Zs, and then you see the millennials in the workforce and see how that goes down. This is another indicator that we're not keeping our families, and that's a reason that we're seeing that we don't have enough workers. And our largest populations are really over 55. And then you'll see a blip. It's high right around 2022. That's Fort Lewis College. So what we need to do is when we get those students, one of our strategies is how do we keep those students so that they can be in our workforce moving forward. Couple other things to mention. This is the under 18 population change, and this was the last census. We're trying to get the new census numbers. But what you can see is that we are not having babies and our youth are not necessarily growing in our area. And so when we talk about affordability issues, our region is not as affordable to families. It is affordable to retirees because they can choose to be here. So something we need to keep in mind if we want to have workers, and we need to think of strategies on how to keep our youth or to have people have more babies. Just kidding. So this is the change from the working population. This is a forecast. And why I show you this is because it shows in our region that we are attractive, that we can attract the working population. And so the things that we choose to do as organizations and governments and policies can hurt this. So right now, people do want to move here. We need to make sure that we have enough housing, that it's affordable so that they actually do move here. Because again, forecasts can change. And then this shows that also people over 65 really want to live here. So you can see that over the next 10 years, they expect to see a lot of growth in especially La Plata and Archuleta County in our region. And, you know, we're one of the high colors compared to the rest of the state. Now, this is a representation of people of color. And I wanted to mention that because our future workforce is going to be more diverse. And so this shows that in the last census, basically that we are seeing that our young people tend to be more diverse. And we're seeing that in the future. This is what we're seeing population by age. You know, our youth are predominantly becoming more and more Hispanic, American Indian descent than white. And the older we are, the less diverse we are. And in thinking about that and your jobs is, I know for Region 9, we are not diverse, but in 10 years, we better figure out a way to be attractive to folks that maybe have a different culture and do things a little differently so that we can have workers. I want to talk real quick about housing. I've got about 4 more slides. This is not my favorite chart, but it has good information. It was the study that was done in August, September by the Council of Governments and Housing Solutions. And what this shows is per community, what number of houses we need just for our current demand for employment and workers and workforce. Like I said, that local residential services. And it has the breakdown, you know, which you can look at the whole study and see whether you feel it's accurate or not. But what it does show is that our low wage and moderate wage jobs is where we need the housing. And what does that mean in terms of if we want to keep families, you know, that's obviously not going to be a bunch of, you know, studios. It's, you know, if we want to keep the aging, it's probably not going to be a lot of townhomes. So really thinking about the type and what we need. And I'm trying to, I guess, argue that we really need to focus on the families because the families have the kids, they have our future workforce, and they are our current workforce. And then you'll see the second chart that says long-term housing needs over the next 20 years. We need to do about 900 homes across the region a year just to maintain not just our worker, but also adding our retirees and our seasonal part-time residents and vacation. So I want to talk about wages real quick. The orange stripe just shows that we updated La Plata County for this presentation, so you can see that. The other data is a year or so older. So average wages is where you take the lowest wage and the highest wage and you average it. So when you look at each of the counties, the average midpoint wage, La Plata County is $51,000. So if I make, you know, somewhere around there, I'm probably doing okay. So Region 9 measures livable wages. And what that is what does a person need to earn in order to live here? So that's different than the average wage. And we do it with a basic expenditures budget. We look at what do people need for food, clothing, shelter. We localize it to housing costs, childcare costs, entertainment, healthcare, transportation, all of those things. And so we come up with an adult needs to make $41,334, more or less. So yay, if I live in Durango and I make about that, I can make it in Durango. But as soon as I have a child or a family, you can see it's no longer affordable. And the last column shows 2 adults, 2 children, but we know so many families that have 1 adult and maybe 3 children. And so that's what really is another indicator of how we are not affordable for the families. And then the detriment to that is we don't have the workers and we don't have the youth coming up. So I just thought that was a nice kind of update on that. Now, how does housing fit? So here we looked at all the communities. So you can see Durango, their median house price is $650,000 for 2021. We did get updated numbers. And the qualifying income to even be able to purchase that house is $119,000 to even get that loan for a 30-year fixed loan with only 10% down. And we assumed 3.25 interest. And then you can see that 62% of our families do not have that income. There's one crux of our housing problem. It's an affordability problem. So going back to when we focus on trying to solve the housing problem, the focus on families has more ripple effects than if you're trying to just have apartments for millennials. And I'm not dissing millennials or folks that are single or anything like that. But the key to us being a high quality community is to really focus on families. And you can just see by these numbers, in Pagosa, for example, 90% of the families could not afford to buy a house right now. So this is not just a La Plata County problem. So I'm just pulling out one job sector. This is teacher salaries. They have gone down for the last 2 years, the average salary. And the reason for that is they're losing longtime teachers that tend to make more money. And the newer teachers obviously make less money. But this is every district in our region and the same house price and the income needed. And as you can see, not one of our teacher salaries, the average teacher salary can afford to buy a house. So unless they have a spouse or unless there is other means, they are not going to be able to establish roots and stay in our community. And that's what we're seeing when it comes to kind of the affordability issues. So I'll stop with all the negative and just talk about what I see as opportunities in all this information. And that is really that we need to figure out ways to attract our youth, and that may look different. But we do at Fort Lewis College, we have youth coming here. And if we can find jobs and housing, if that's available for them, there are studies that show that 60% of your college class will stay in a community if they have a job in housing. 60%, and we need those young people. Look at CSU, Fort Collins. So that's something that we can really work towards. We are going to have a worker shortage. So how do we get more people into the workforce? All of the efforts you all are doing around homelessness. We have the opioid settlement now to start working on maybe substance use. We need to try to have the supports in place to get more people into the workforce because we're going to need them. And then also provide opportunities for aging. When I retire, I may want to work part-time and I want to work on my terms, but in the future, we may have to be very open to that so that we can keep our aging population working at least for a while and in some form or fashion. Because again, our future growth, all of the data that we're looking at, the 65 and over, is going to be our largest number. And then again, trying to just think about how do we include folks that are persons of color or different racial and ethnic backgrounds, because they are the growing number in our population and our youth are becoming more and more diverse. And then finally, teleworking. When I looked at that forecast, it say people want to be here. So our workers want to be in this region. If we can address having housing for them and broadband, then we can keep them because they do truly want to be here. So this is my contact information. And again, if you have any questions, I'm open to it. Thank you for listening. I know that was quite a bit of data. Let me see if I can stop sharing. I'm afraid I may just disappear.
Thank you, Laura, very, very much. And I understand, is this presentation on your website?
No, it is not, but we can definitely put it there. It is on the Fort Lewis College website for the Economic Forum.
It'd be great. Or if you could share it with the council members. I'm sure that in looking at this as time goes by, we'll have questions for you and want to get in touch with you and get some answers to that. So we really appreciate the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
On to the review of the consent agenda. The consent agenda is intended to allow the City Council by a single motion to approve matters that are considered routine or non-controversial. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member requests an item be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Items removed from the consent agenda will be considered under agenda item 9. Ms. Phillips, may we have a reading of the consent agenda, please?
Certainly. Item 8.1, approval of the minutes for the February 1st City Council study session. 8.2, approval of the minutes for the February 1st City Council regular meeting. 8.3, a request for public hearing with the proposed date of Wednesday, March 2nd, 2022, to consider an ordinance amending Chapter 23 through 30 of the Code of Ordinances, City of Durango, to allow menstrual care products, to be tax exempt. And 8.4 is final approval of Ordinance O 2022-2, amending Chapter 27 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Durango, the Land Use and Development Code, by the amendment of Chapter 2 and 7 related to commercial use of required on-site parking and definitions and declaring an effective date.
Thank you very much. Are there any consent agenda items that a councilor would like to remove? All right, seeing none, may we have a vote, please?
Make a motion to approve consent agenda items.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Any discussion? May we have a vote, please?
Councilor Buell?
Yes.
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Councilor Bosmans?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy?
Yes.
Mayor Baxter?
Yes. We're on to item 11, public hearings. The City Council previously directed staff to publish notice of public hearing for each hearing listed below. The following proposed ordinances or topics have been set for public hearing at this meeting. The issues dealt with in this section of the agenda are of a legislative or policy nature. So on 11.1, legislative and policy related hearings. 11.2, a public hearing to consider an easement for Charter Communications, Inc. for the installation of an underground fiber optic line to service properties in the area.
Yes, Mayor and Council, we have Bryce Bierman with our Community Development Department to present this item.
Yes, hello everybody. Thanks for joining tonight. I'm gonna share my screen just to show you a brief little PowerPoint that'll explain this easement, hopefully cover any questions that you may have. Are you guys able to see the PowerPoint screen now? Okay, great. All right, yeah, so the easement request is for Charter Communications. This is going to be a new line. And you can see it outlined on this context map here. There is currently a fast track communications line running along the north side of Avenida del Sol here, and they'd be putting this just running parallel to that. Here is the actual easement description. You can see the line running here, just north of Avenida del Sol and terminating here. It's a relatively short easement, all on city property. And would upgrade the services to the neighboring locations. just kind of a summary of what we would recommend as a motion here today. Mayor Baxter covered most of that already.
All right.
And I'll open it up to you guys if you do have any other questions. Otherwise, I would leave it to you, Mayor Baxter, for a motion.
Thank you. Actually, we need to open the public hearing first. And are there any people in attendance who would like to comment regarding this hearing? If you'd like to, please raise your hand and we will let you speak.
I do not have any hands raised, Mayor.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Then I will go ahead and close the public hearing. Councilors, do you have any questions for staff? Okay, so seeing none, would someone like to make a motion?
Make a motion that City Council set a public hearing to consider the Charter Communication Inc.'s easement along the north side of Avenida del Sol. It says February 15th, 2022.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? Nope. Seeing none, may we have a vote, please?
Sorry to interrupt. The motion, I think, was the old motion from the previous agenda. So,
okay. Can you
pull the motion up, Bryce?
I'm reading it off of the agenda doc. So go ahead and state what the new motion should correctly be, and I'll probably just repeat that or say so be it as amended.
Bryce, do you have it on that slide? If you could either just read it or. And you're muted, Bryce.
Here we go. Here, I'll read it from the slide here. All right, so it'd be a motion to approve the Charter Communications easement across city-owned property on the north side of Avenida del Sol for a new fiber optic service line as depicted in the attached documentation, and direct the city attorney to prepare an ordinance authorizing the granting of this easement for a first reading at a regularly scheduled council meeting.
Sorry about that. I will amend my motion to that one, please. Thank you.
And I'll second.
Great, thank you. Is there any discussion by council? May we have a vote, please?
Yes.
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 Yes, thank you. That motion passes. On to 11.3, a public hearing to consider an easement for La Plata Electric Association to service the new Animas High School. Oh, I'm sorry. This is to be continued to March 2nd, 2022. So we would need a motion to that effect to continue it.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? May we have a vote, please?
Yes.
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 Yes, thank you. That motion passes. 11.4, a public hearing to consider the adoption of the 2018 International Codes and associated amendments to the City Code of Ordinances.
Yes, Mayor and Council, we have Tony Medvid to present this item.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me. Here to request the amendment or the adoption of the 2018 building codes and the amendments to the code and ordinances. I have a brief PowerPoint. I'd like to share my screen at this time. So again, at this time, we're proposing the adoption of the 2018 international codes. Those would include the International Building Code, the International Residential Code, the International Plumbing, Mechanical, Fuel Gas Codes, and the International Fire Code, along with the International Energy Conservation Code. A few of the big changes that will be proposed in this is language from the 2021 IPC will be taken into the 2018 pertaining to single-user restrooms. New single-user restrooms shall be identified now as being available to persons regardless of sex. Again, will align with the strategic plan of the city of Durango. During our process, staff reviewed both the 2018 International Energy Conservation Code along with the 2021 International Energy Conservation Code. Some of the changes from the 15 to the 18 would increase the window efficiency, the U factor from 0.32 to 0.30. It would also increase the percentage of efficient lighting required in new homes from 75% to 90%. The energy rating index was increased from 55 to 61. Of course, the lower the score, the more efficient the home. This allows for an easier target for builders to take the performance path of the energy code. Installation underneath of a slab for heated slabs will now be required to have an R5 continuous. And they added improved language to clarify the air sealing requirements. Again, during the review, we looked at the 21 code. Some of the big changes in that now requires an R5 continuous installation, which would be a foam board insulation or an integrated foam board and shear that would be on the outside of the walls. That's on top of the already required R20 insulation in the walls. They took the percentage of efficient lighting and increased it from the 75 of the 2015 that we're on to 100%. R values of roofs was increased from a 49 to a 60. There's a requirement in the 21 code that you have to have an additional efficiency package regardless of what path you take. And duct sealing is required no matter the location within a building. We did a quick or extensive review. This is just a quick slide showing the construction cost increase. They're all compared to the 2009 Energy Code used as a base. So in Climate Zone 5B, from the 2009, the price was increased around $1,500. The 18 code adds about $300 to that. And the 21 code would add about a $4,000 upfront increase. That is a kind of preliminary number. The code came out just last year, so there may be an updated cost analysis that comes out once more jurisdictions adopt the 21. But again, it does add some upfront costs, and that was part of the consideration while reviewing the codes. We are looking to bring another section of the 21 code in for ventilation of homes. This would require the mechanical ventilation systems to be tested to ensure that they're providing the proper ventilation of a home. This will help maintain good indoor air quality, maintain air movement, and control the moisture in the home. Building Durango, from here and beyond, city staff will continue to review advancements in the energy codes and building codes, continue to compare and evaluate the cost of new construction with the latest edition of the I-codes, discuss the ability of new developments to meet sustainability goals, and our biggest goal is to provide attainable housing for our community. And so it is our recommendation that the City Council direct the city attorney to prepare the necessary ordinances to adopt the 2018 I-codes and make the changes to the municipal code of ordinances.
Thank you, Tony. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Are there any people in attendance who would like to speak at the public hearing? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Councilors, do you have any questions or comments for staff on this? So I do. I really love the idea that we are going to be requiring single-user bathrooms in new commercial buildings, and that's great. I think that's wonderful. I was wondering, Tony, there was a note under International Fire Code Ordinance, and the section requiring Group A2 of existing buildings to be sprinklered is being deleted. Are there any other groups other than A2 that are required to be sprinkled if they're existing?
I would have to look into that. I don't believe there are. That one came up in a conversation as it relates to some of the bigger assembly occupancies. But I guess, like I said, to the best of my knowledge, I do not know of any others that provided a conflict of existing buildings.
Could you define Group A2 for us?
Yeah, Group A2 would be a restaurant, a bar, tavern, sort of establishment. The requirements are, they're based off of the square footage and occupancy of the structures. So some of the bigger structures in town, we'll say the Elks Club and the VFW, they would fall under those square footage requirements.
And what about like manufacturing or commercial?
Those all have their own requirements. I don't know that, and a lot of it is triggered upon if they're doing work or remodel or a change of occupancy to those rather than just being existing as they stand. Okay, great, thank you. So as we discussed in the past, I think one concern of council in general, and mine specifically, is the upfront costs for updating all these codes to a buyer is fairly significant. And I would imagine to someone building a rental complex also or anything like that, it's fairly significant, so that the upfront cost is kind of working against our idea of people being able to buy homes given their income. I recognize that there is a savings, and you presented some over a 30-year analysis period, but when you're talking a couple $100s of savings a year versus thousands of dollars up front to buy a home, that's a real challenge. So I am concerned that we're going to have to work even harder now to lower the price of housing in order to make it affordable. And I think we need to recognize that every time we adopt codes, every time we do, and I realize there's safety involved in all of that, but we have to think about what we're doing to the affordability. We've had conversations before about changing parking requirements or not requiring the same street standards or sidewalk standards in order to help keep developments less, more affordable and less expensive. So I just wanted to point that out, that this is it's something that we're gonna have to consider. We're kind of almost working against ourselves in some way here, so. And just to kind of touch on that subject, the upfront costs of the 18 are around, compared to the 15 that we're currently on, is around $300. So that was a big consideration while looking at the 21, was those more increased upfront costs, and especially as it relates to commercial buildings. I didn't touch on it a whole lot in this presentation, but that was a big consideration for the 21 codes and something that we're definitely have to keep an eye on in the future.
Right, and I really appreciate that you're looking at that also. And I did notice that since 2009, so you say 2015 is an increase of $1,500 per unit, 2018 is an increase of $1,800 per unit, and 2021 was an increase of $5,400 per unit. So I appreciate that we're not going all the way to 2021 at this point in time, but I do still want to recognize that little bit of escalation in costs there.
Certainly.
Yeah, thank you. Councilors, do you have any other comments? No?
I would just add one. I just find it interesting. I remember when we updated to the 2015 codes, and it was, honestly, it was controversial. It was a controversial meeting, and there was a lot of developers in the room, and exactly what you're speaking to, Mayor, about the increase in cost to build. And so it's interesting that I think people now realize just the importance of this tool that we upgrade and update to these, IBC codes on a regular basis to preserve the public health and safety for the people that are ultimately going to be in the unit. So, and it creates, of course, more efficient designs and better use of technology, more modern technology. So I understand all that, but it's interesting to see us go through this a second time now and have very little community input. Just kind of surprises me. And I'm not sure why that is.
Any other comments, councilors? No? Would someone like to make a motion then, please?
I'll move to direct the city attorney to prepare the necessary ordinances to adopt the amended 2018 I-codes and to make changes to the municipal code of ordinances as recommended.
I will second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? May we have a vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy?
Yes.
Councilor Buell?
Yes.
Councilor Bosmans?
Yes.
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Mayor Baxter?
Yes. Now we move on to 11.5, quasi-judicial hearings. So 11.5.1 is continued from February 15th, and it's a public hearing to consider the River Roost minor preliminary subdivision.
Yes, Mayor and Council, Scott Shine, Assistant Director of Community Development, will be leading this presentation.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I'm Scott Shine with Community Development. Are you seeing my slide deck now?
We are, thank you.
Great. So I'm pinch hitting here a little bit. Mark Williams has been the project manager for this item, but it's a relatively straightforward item, so don't expect any complications, and hope Mark heals up soon. This is the site on the corner of 9th Street and Camino del Rio. It's the old Durango Downtown Inn. Applebee's is also on this site. This property has been purchased and is in the process of being converted from a hotel occupancy into residential occupancy, 141 studio units. That process was reviewed and approved under an administrative review because they were not adding any square feet. They didn't need any variances. So that's underway, but and we're excited about that, and excited to add those units to the housing mix in Durango. But through that process, we've had conversations with the new owners, and as part of converting from a hotel use to a residential use, they would have been required to pay the parks fee, the park impact fee. And so we got to talking with them and with our Parks and Recreation Department. The river trail obviously exists behind the property, but it's just under an easement now. And our Parks and Recreation Department really prefers to own the land where our trails go. It's obviously the river corridor, and they do a lot of maintenance work. So it just makes sense for us to own the property. So this subdivision would create almost a 1 acre lot that would then be granted over to the city to contain the trail corridor and the river. in lieu of the park fee that would have been required, which we think is a very good arrangement. So this is just a quick visual for you to understand what the subdivision is accomplishing. The 1 acre piece is obviously on the west side. This is the subdivision plat that was in your packet. It has more details about easements and the survey of the property. But as I said, overall, it's a very simple subdivision supported by city staff. I think it's a good partnership overall. We didn't receive any public comment for or against the subdivision, and we've reviewed it against the Land Use and Development Code criteria. We find that it complies with those criteria. Planning Commission reviewed this and goes back in December, and they unanimously recommended approval to City Council. And so the recommended motion for tonight is here on this slide. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Scott. I will go ahead and open up the public hearing. Are there any people in attendance who would like to speak? If so, please raise your hand. All right, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. And councilors, do you have any questions for staff on this project? Councilor Issa.
Yes, thank you, staff, for the presentation. I was reading through the Planning Commission meeting minutes, and they had brought up a couple of issues that I thought were really relevant, and I just wanted to bring up again just to see if there's anything that we can do. The first one that they brought up, which I totally agreed with, was the sidewalk on Camino, and I understand that I understood, at least from that discussion, that there's nothing that can be done because of their parking lot issue. Is that true?
The eastern edge of the parking lot is right up against the edge of the roadway, so it's really constrained. We did look at ways to move pedestrians through that site, and just continues to be a pretty constrained site. If they were required to put the sidewalk in, that's probably about a quarter or a fifth of their parking that would be eliminated. And so it was a trade-off, and it would have been a very difficult to fit it in. So we looked at the river trail that connects around, and it was not a requirement as part of that conversion.
Okay, that's what it's so unfortunate as far as accessibility, but at least we do have the river trail in the back, and hopefully we can ensure that that's connecting to pedestrian routes so that we can continue that. And then, they also brought up another obviously really great issue, which was the safe pedestrian crosswalk for 9th and Camino del Rio. Can we ensure, is there anything we can do to try to ensure safe crossing there while we're in this process?
Yeah, CDOT is actually doing some pretty extensive upgrades to that intersection, and I think they're on pause now, but they're coming back to that in the spring to finish up the work. And they added some ADA ramps. They're improving the timing of the signals to make sure there's adequate time for people to get across. So I think CDOT is really improving how that intersection flows as far as bike and ped crossing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other councilors, questions, comments? So I had a couple of questions, and I recognize the sidewalk issues on Camino, but what about on 9th?
There is a stub of sidewalk that runs down 9th, and I think it's an attached walk that gets all the way back to the river trail.
Okay, when you say stub, how wide is that?
Usually attached walks are 4 or 5 feet. They're narrower than our typical.
Okay, so they could walk across 9th and walk on the sidewalk to get to the river trail then?
Yeah, they can go across, or like I said, I don't have the details, but I think there is partway through the site, there's an attached sidewalk.
On 9th?
Back to the west on 9th, yeah.
But not from the corner?
I'm sorry, I'd have to, trying to look at an aerial here.
God, can I backstop you here?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin.
Kevin Hall, Community Development. CDOT is rebuilding that intersection, as council probably knows, with ADA ramps on each corner. The crosswalk on 9th will be on the north side to cross from west to east. But my understanding is they also include walkways to ensure there's connectivity to the river trail as part of their redevelopment activity.
Would that be on that south side of 9th Street?
Let us follow up. That is my understanding, Mayor Baxter, but I don't want to misspeak here. Why don't you let us take a look at the plans tomorrow, and then we'll get a confirmation out to council to that effect.
That would be great, because anything we can do to improve the walkability and safety there, and in conjunction with CDOT, that's great that they're doing that. That would be wonderful. One of the other comments that was made at the Planning Commission was that when a hotel converts to living units, there's less parking requirements. So, you know, is something like, is there an advantage that we could take advantage of with less parking to do something special? I don't know, a little park in the corner of 9th and Camino to make it attractive. You know, I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out ways to take advantage of that.
You mean you just use that space differently?
Mm-hmm. Because if they don't need as many parking spots, then you could, you know, we could help CDOT put a nice walkable area there and make it attractive rather than kind of like how it is right now.
Yeah, on the corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that access point, I'm not sure where that landed, but that is definitely a non-conforming access point that close to the intersection. So they may have to do some improvements to either remove or restrict movements out of there. So that might also free up some space.
Right. So in this whole thing, I'd really like us not to lose the capability to make some adjustments with that to provide a better amenity for our community members.
Okay, thank you.
Will there be any workforce, quote unquote, workforce units in this project?
There are no rent restrictions on the units. It's a market rate conversion. They are small studios, so I think you would refer to this as affordable by design. Smaller studios, but in a nice walkable, multimodal location. So we did not pursue negotiating or contributing to the project in a way that would result in rental restrictions.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Other councilors, any comments? No? Would someone like to make a motion?
I can make a motion. Move to recommend approval of the proposed River Roost preliminary minor subdivision with the findings and conditions as outlined in the staff report.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? May we have a vote, please?
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Councilor Bosmans?
Yes.
Councilor Buell?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy?
Yes.
Mayor Baxter?
Yes, thank you, that passes. 11.2.1, a public hearing to consider a proposal from KB Durango for a preliminary plan amendment and site plan review to develop an apartment complex near the intersection of Wilson Gulch Drive and Three Springs Boulevard.
Yes, Mayor and Council, Scott Shine, part 2 on this one.
Great, thank you. I'm back for more. This is a very large apartment project out at Three Springs that we've been working with this development team for a number of months now. And overall, very excited to be able to bring it to council for consideration. I'll jump into some of the details I will say and give a little bit of a heads up on the front end. I'm going to recommend that we do the presentation a little bit differently. I'm going to set the stage, just talk at a very high level about the site and the context, and then ask that the development team present a bit more about the details and share with you their design process. They've had a very robust design process, and so I think it's worth having them share that with you, and then I'll come back on and close out with sort of the land use and development code review and some other points to follow up. So Mayor, just a heads up for you that I'll start with a few slides and then pass it over to some of the representatives from the applicant.
Thank you.
So as you can see here, it's a 211 unit residential complex. There's 3 different apartment buildings that will be 4 stories. Some have some loft space. And then there's 2 townhome buildings containing 9 townhome units on a little over 4.5 acre site at the intersection of Three Springs Boulevard and Wilson Gulch Drive. Quick overview of the process. The reason it's before you tonight is because the lot is currently designated in the Three Springs preliminary plan as what's called a traditional urban village lot. They're requesting a change to a variable lot, which gets them the dimensional standards that they need to accommodate their proposed development. Major site plan review is also a process that we take projects through when they create more than 10,000 square feet of new building area. This is more than that, but that the final approval entity for that is Planning Commission. So they saw it, they've approved it, but I'm going to cover some of those elements for you because they're interrelated, but the formal motion is going to be focused on that preliminary plan amendment, which is what the council is the approval entity for. So for context, as I said, it's at the corner of Three Springs Boulevard and Wilson Gulch Drive. You can see the site outlined there in yellow dashed line. And then zooming in a little bit, just a few elements around the site that are important to kind of keep in your mind here about how the project interacts and will be viewed from that main entry roundabout into the hospital. We've got a great trail corridor that was developed by Three Springs right adjacent to the site. And then you have the Mercy drainage facility and some open space there that the applicants have been working with Mercy to integrate into the site. The 2 points of access are shown here with the green arrows. So again, just some things to keep in your mind, and then I'm going to overlay the site plan with those pieces pulled out. These 2 buildings along Three Springs Boulevard are the townhome buildings, and then the 3 large buildings kind of wrap around the site from north to the southwest. There are garages underneath the building, so there's a level of parking, and then, as you can see, some surface parking. There's also a central courtyard here with some amenities for the residents, a pool, a hot tub, some gathering spaces. And 2 key things that I think the applicants will talk more about, but I want to get on your radar, is they have received approval from Mercy for an easement to develop a walking trail and landscape some of this area that you can tell right now is a little bit neglected. It's just kind of a drainage feature, and they're really wanting to clean up that edge of the property, make it more of an amenity for the residents, and also make it a through connection for pedestrians to get through the site. Instead of having to walk through the parking lot, they're able to walk on a trail. The other piece to be aware of is this interface with the city trail corridor. There's been a need to develop an emergency access lane around this edge of the building to provide aerial access for DFPD. That requires an easement to be granted. by the city to the owner of this property to build that emergency access lane. That will come before you later because, as you saw earlier, easements need to be approved by council. But if you had concerns or any questions about that, now would be an appropriate time to let us know and let the applicants know about that emergency access. But they also want to make sure that that really prominent corner of the site is well landscaped, is well screened, because as you know, a lot of people are moving through this main roundabout, and they want that to be an attractive sort of entry feature for the hospital and for the Three Springs neighborhood. So they put a lot of work into how they want to landscape that and have that screened. So as I mentioned, these are just the components of the process. I can come back to these and give some more details after we hear more about the project. But just wanted you to be aware of the different components that they're seeking approval for. And I think with that, I will turn it over to some of the applicants. I know some have been admitted, but if we need to let more in, let us know.
Scott, could you make sure Ian Christensen, Michael H., Kenneth Walpita, Rob Ekstrom are moved over? I probably missed a few. Philip. Ian Christensen's going to start us off. Good evening, council members. Thank you, Scott. We were charged with taking a very large project and presenting it in a short amount of time, so I'm not going to say much. But if you've got Ian Christensen moved over, she was going to start us out.
Yeah, good evening. Yeah, we've got our design architect who's got a really bold, nice design for this that we'll be presenting along with SEH, who's our architect of record and engineering team with Nancy. And I'm just waiting for our design, or for SEH to share their screen, or AO. Okay, AO's got that. Great. So Scott did a great job of introducing the project and location. So I'm going to go through that really quick. And Kenneth, you can flip to the next slide. DHM has been working with Three Springs continuously since 2004 as part of the team doing master planning through helping write the codes and standards and design guidelines and working on many of the sites, and especially the public realm. And I'm bringing that up just because the Three Springs has a sort of downtown core concept where walkability is key. And the idea is that you really minimize vehicles in favor of having pedestrians be able to move through this site. And so you park and leave your car if you even need a car at all. And so that's an integral part of how we laid this site out. And this board done by our design architects, AO, just highlights the context that we're coming into with that kind of dense city core, with the green space forming a framework with a variety of amenities and land uses within that. So flipping to the next slide. So zooming into our site here between the entry road and the hospital, early studies just looking at the kind of key views. And so the massing of the architecture is located to be along the walkway and roadway frontages. So as you drive into the project and walk around it, which there's existing walkways that wrap all the way around. And Scott had talked about how we're adding a walkway that we had already approved the easement with Mercy along the back, that you can really circulate around this, and your view will be of those building frontages. And then the parking, which we sized that to just exactly meet the need here, no more, no less, fits well in the back. And with the grades, it kind of gets hidden pretty well from sight between that open space backing up against Mercy's parking and being wrapped by buildings in the front. And then I also just want to note before we leave this plan too, that you can see on the numbered buildings that there are garages proposed that you can reach. It's not a garage for every unit, but kind of what fits head in along the parking lot edge. So there's a number of garages that helps reduce the total surface parking that's needed for the project. Okay, so flip into the next slide. So as part of the site plan description too, in the center, we've located a amenity plaza area. And so that'll have an outdoor pool for the residents along with a hot tub. There's also a grill and an outdoor fire ring, a nature play area for kids. So not kind of playground equipment, but just more this kind of trend of more naturalistic play elements in a soft surface area for children to use. And then just open plaza. It's been real fun working with this team on sort of indoor, outdoor environment for the community room and fitness center. There's a dog wash as part of the building. And then outside, we also have a bicycle rinse off area for people to use, and just trying to make it very friendly. The lighting is complementary to the other lighting that's done standard with Three Springs, if you remember that kind of lighting standard, and those are all dark sky compliant to meet the city's goals there, but still trying to add a little bit of friendly safety kind of atmosphere to the landscape and the lighting with that. Scott already talked about the fire lane. The fire lane that was added, kind of, it's right below the number 1 here. How that'll appear when it's finished is it will integrate with the landscape. It has a walkway as part of it, a flat concrete walkway, and then that'll be, say, about 5 feet wide, and then the remainder will be turf rings, so it'll just appear like kind of grass turf area. So while that'll be functional if needed, and hopefully never needed, to access the back of the building, you won't really know it's there unless you're kind of aware of that sort of technicality, and it'll blend in. The trails are really important. We've linked to this regional trail will eventually connect to the Smart 160 trail, so you can get all the way into Durango with that. The landscaping and planting is going to continue what we've been doing throughout Three Springs, so very low water and adapted native type plants. A lot of shade trees, especially in the back where we can shade the parking lot, and then a mix of four season colors, so evergreens that are a little more vertical that accent the building shapes, and AO will get into those architectural kind of massing and design next. So that's it for site design, and then I'll turn it over to our design architect.
Hello, this is Kenneth Palpita from AO Architects. I'm sorry, my camera is not on for some reason. Is it okay to go without the camera?
Yes, we could, because we're looking at your screen.
Oh, here it is. Here it is. Got it. Thank you. So let me go to the conceptual site plan really quickly and explain the core concept behind our design. So we identified the key focal point for the design as a whole, as a starting point. So we thought that the center roundabout here would be a good point of arrival to the whole neighborhood, a good introduction to the Three Springs, the neighborhoods. So we thought this main focal point, like to have this high point architecture, and also develop this urban frontage leading towards the hospital side, and also the new Mercado district developed to the east side, which flows, like, bring that vibe along the Pioneer Avenue, and how to inject that into our side by aligning the main project entry with the Pioneer Boulevard. So that'll be a nice entry to the project and to the whole neighborhood. So let me go to the model and share a few views. So this is what you are seeing is the main focal point of building 1 and with the roundabout. So that's what you see. The architecture, like as we are seeing here, I'll explain the architecture. So the style is derived from traditional agrarian style with a nice fusion with contemporary style. So you have this variegated roof line and different building forms, like roofs containing with the building mass and how it plays with the flat roofs and pitch roofed, the gable roofs, create that interesting architectural vibe throughout the project. With 5 buildings, we are having 2 major color schemes throughout the project with different material palettes to create that variety and interest to break the monotony. As we are moving more closer to the major element, so that's what a little closer look. And as we are moving along the Wilson and Gulch Road, that's the elevation you are seeing, very simplified agrarian style mixing with contemporary styles. And also we identified the corner, the dedication way as another interesting point which leads you to the hospital. So we treated that corner a little bit differently, more cleaner looking, simpler looking, but with high value, added high value with high, better materiality to give that urban feel to that corner. Moving to the east side, which we connect the Pioneer Boulevard with the project, bringing that Mercado District vibe. So we placed these 3-story townhome buildings along the Three Springs Boulevard to create that entryway aligned with the Pioneer Boulevard. So going more closer to show that how we treated that streetscape, the frontage. So it's more, it's feel more like a 2-story building with the elevation changes. These are the townhomes, and we are creating these patios, landscapes, and walkways with these materiality and gable roof elements along this frontage to create that urban village feel into the project. So basically, that's where we are with our scheme. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kenneth and Ann. I know it's a little more detailed than council typically gets on the design, but I wanted you to see the intention that went into it. And as I said, it's been a long process. As I think most of you know, Three Springs has its own design review committee. And this design team spent many months working with that Three Springs group to get it to a place where it was ready for city review and approval. So a lot of thought and energy has gone into the design. It's a large project, obviously, for our community. 4-story buildings are going to be between 60 and 62 feet in height. The height downtown, the max downtown is 55 feet. So that gives you a sense of scale there. And as we all know, we've promoted the idea of density. We've promoted the idea of density in the right places. Some of the other things about the site that we failed to mention is it's on a transit line. They will be building a new full transit stop with pullouts along Wilson Gulch Drive. As Ann mentioned, there will be connections to Smart 160. There's obviously a lot of existing commercial services in the Three Springs neighborhood with more coming in. City Council saw a grocery store last year at the Three Springs Crossing development. So it really is a mixed use hub. It's turning into and sort of achieving that vision that Three Springs had. And this is certainly going to be a big step in starting to promote that neighborhood feel. And Kenneth, I think you can stop sharing now your screen,
Sure.
and I'll wrap up. So there should be in your Zoom window. You can just say stop share. Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Is that back up, Mayor? My slide?
Yes, it
Yeah,
is.
right.
Thank you. So again, you get a sense of the scale and how the site was very intentionally laid out from more of a policy level. Spent a lot of time facilitating the review of the project with Public Works, Transportation, our utilities folks, because it does achieve multiple goals identified by council in the comprehensive plan, strategic plan, and the housing plan. It really is a good option for a more dense type of development. As we heard from Laura Lewis Marchino, we need a diversity of housing options. So this is addressing one portion of the market. We know we also want to accomplish more ownership options and family housing, but with the close proximity to the hospital and other employment centers, this will definitely meet a need. Wanted to just also point out in support of that Three Springs being an area of growth that's specifically called out in the housing plan. It talks about areas of stability in sort of our established neighborhoods, areas of change, and then areas of growth. And the green areas of growth are larger master plan communities, Three Springs, Twin Buttes, that will absorb a lot of the new housing development. We obviously will facilitate smaller infill projects, but this is where we envisioned the larger types of development. And related to that, I wanted to maybe anticipate a question that's going to come. It was in the staff report, but I wanted to call it out. So this property is located within Three Springs. When Three Springs was annexed in 2004, there was a part of their development agreement related to affordable and attainable housing. They developed a lot of affordable housing, or I should say attainable housing, early on in their development. And they also dedicated land for what we strictly define as affordable housing. The 66-unit Pinion Terrace property was dedicated, the land for that was dedicated by Three Springs. In 2016, we renegotiated that affordable attainable agreement with Three Springs, and we placed a 0.5% voluntary transfer fee on all real estate transactions in Three Springs. That fee has generated $802,511 in revenue over the last 5 or 6 years, dedicated for housing purposes. In addition to those efforts, Three Springs donated 3 acres to the city to facilitate the development of VOA along Wilson Gulch, low-income senior housing. That was 53 units on the front end, and then phase 2 will be at least that many units. So when we looked at this project, again, as part of Three Springs that negotiated all these agreements regarding affordable, attainable housing, there are not any specific rent restrictions being imposed on this project. Given the context that it's in, given the fact that it was annexed in 2004, and these other programs were put in place on the Three Springs development, we feel that overall they have met their affordable, attainable commitments, and so we didn't impose any specific requirements on this project. Other properties, and I think maybe there was some confusion. There's another project that council will see that has to go through the annexation process. That gives us a lot more leverage to negotiate and require rent restrictions for new residential projects, and you'll see the results of that in a future meeting. So I just want you to have that in your minds and know that it's on our minds. It's in all of our conversations with developers. We're trying to figure out what works for each different project and what makes the most sense. It's a delicate balance of just bringing in new supply and not threatening that new supply with overly burdensome restrictions or requirements, but also being hopefully skillful negotiators to make sure we're getting good outcomes for the community. There's a lot of other things we could talk about. They did a lot as far as sustainable design. They're meeting our new EV parking standards. They're doing, like I said, a lot as far as energy efficiency. And I'm sure the design team would be happy to answer any questions about that. But I think with that, I will see if council has any questions. And then after the public hearing, we can circle back and talk about the process and any questions about that.
Excellent. Thank you, Scott. So I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Are there any people in attendance who would like to speak at the public hearing? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Do you want to stop sharing while if there's discussion or questions, or? Great, thank you. Councilors, do you have any questions or discussion? Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy.
First of all, a huge thanks to the staff and to the developers for putting together an artistic and welcoming and what appears to be sustainable community. I think it's going to be a wonderful addition. And I appreciate so very much the hard work and your work working with the staff to address this. So thank you. That's all I have to say.
Great. Other councilors, any comments?
I would echo the same. Well said, Councilor Noseworthy. And yeah, thank you also to staff for being so creative and innovative and working to get these projects on the ground and going. So thank you very much for that. I'm excited to see this go up. It looks like a great mix of units to meet a market need. Just one quick question. I didn't hear anything, and I'm sure you have it because you seem to answer every single other question I had, which was bike racks. Do we have a covered bike rack section outside for people to encourage bike use, I hope? Or did I just miss it?
No, we do have bike parking requirements, and if anyone from the design team wants to speak specifically to that, but they do have covered bike parking. I think they've mentioned kind of a bike maintenance area or room too to help people with.
Scott, I can jump in
right.
We've included a bike and ski tuning room for the residents. We've got tremendous bike storage we all appreciate the cost and expense of the mountain bikes these days. So we've really developed a nice area for them to safely store their bikes, both inside the complex and on the outside. And so we've tried to think of everything that's conducive to the Durango lifestyle, to accommodate the wonderful environment we all live in.
It's so great. It's just so great because so often in these buildings, when it's not adequate, people actually have to bring dirty bikes into the home or, something like that. So I think that is wonderful. Great.
We've got a beautiful dog washing room for everybody when they're taking their dogs on hikes and in the river. So we've got kayak storage.
Oh my God, that's great.
There's also a bike rinse off outside before you come in, which would help. And I just wanted to note too that Scott Shine has just gone above and beyond to coordinate with us to help us out and just been super helpful and responsive. And we've been able to kind of move at a really fast pace because of his assistance with all the other agencies and city departments and just kind of problem solving and interpreting code and working with the Three Springs DRC. We had multiple meetings with the DRC that he's been a part of. So thank you to Scott.
Thank you.
Very much so. Thank you, Scott.
Councilor Bosman, you had a question or a comment?
I wanted to say thank you as well for making this happen and to the great partnership, as I hear it, and addressing all the issues that Durango residents deal with, dogs and mountain bikes and skis, it seems. So I think it's a great development. I think for us as the cities and the council, we need to really focus on developments in this area that address parks and recreational facilities for the whole area. I think this Three Springs area as a whole is being maybe a little bit left behind or not getting their fair share. So that's maybe something for the future discussion. But with this development, very good news. Thank you.
I'll just echo real quick. Yeah, I agree with all the other counselors, and 202 units is extraordinary. And and thank you to Scott and our staff for really going above and beyond. That always is great to hear from our partners in the community. So, hey.
Yeah, a very innovative project. I'm just intrigued by it. I can't wait to go out there and watch it go up and then wander around in it. And I love how you've incorporated it and worked with Mercy and with the other stakeholders around. And I'm just really impressed. I think this will be a great example for other developers of what can be done and how to, as the other counselors have said, accommodate Durango, who we are, our quality of life and our essence. So I really appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you to staff too, Scott particularly. It's been great.
It's been a team effort. Dirk's been involved, Parks and Rec have been involved, as I said, utilities, transportation. So it's everybody's aligned, and that makes it fun and makes it go smoothly. So.
This is what I like to hear, and this is how I hope they all go. If there's no further comments, would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve. I hope I'm on the right one. To approve the proposal.
Oh, wait a second, Melissa. I think Mr. Nelson had his finger raised.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Did you have the hearing?
Didn't I have a public? Yeah, I had the yeah.
Just double checking. Thanks.
That's okay. I know. Thank you. Okay, I'm sorry. Councilor Youssef, please go ahead.
I make a motion to approve the proposal from KB Durango for a preliminary plan amendment to enable enable a development to develop an apartment complex near the intersection of Wilson Gulch Drive and Three Springs Boulevard, subject to the conditions and findings listed in the staff report and discussed at this public hearing.
Second.
Is there any further discussion or comments? May we have a vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy?
Yes.
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Councilor Buell?
Yes.
Councilor Bosmans?
Yes.
Mayor Baxter?
Yes. Thank you very much, everyone. I look forward to seeing you.
Thank you.
On to general business. 12.1 is discussion and possible action concerning a resolution approving amendments to the 2021 and 2022 adopted budgets.
Yes, Mayor and Council, we have Devin Schmidt, our Budget Strategic Planning Officer for this item.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Devin Schmidt. I am the Budget and Strategic Plan Officer. I'm going to share my screen here for you all. Give me 1 second. Okay. So this item and this presentation is really to provide additional transparency around item 12.1, which is discussion and possible action to approve amendments to the 2021 and the 2022 budget. While this budget amendment does include line item detail, that is driven by an effort to provide transparency and comply with the current budget operating policy, which states that the level of control is at a fund and department level. Our goal as staff is to really regain that trust so that we may generate greater efficiencies by having council follow state budget law, which enables the budget to be approved by council at a fund level. And that would enable the city manager authority to approve operating line item changes within a fund. But as we continue to build trust with the financials, we certainly look forward to bringing that efficiency to the city. So as we're looking at the strategic plan alignment, this does fall under financial excellence and transparency. I'm going to start with the 2021 adopted budget amendment, and then I'll move into the 22. So the real goal and purpose of this, as I mentioned, is to provide transparency, but also follow our operating budget policy, which says the budget is approved at a department level. So part of that is some cleanup there. With the removal of contingency in 21, there were a couple departmental overruns that we'd like to shore up for the 2021 budget. Also for availability of goods, any items that were not received by the end of 2021 were moved into 2022, and that's really a result of following governmental accounting principles. Additionally, any projects that require reappropriation due to any unforeseen circumstances, and I'll go into a little bit greater detail about what those entail, also were reappropriated for 2022. In this instance, the budget will be adjusted downward. And then previously appropriated, or just an effort of transparency, we do have some new funds established in 2022. So in some cases, it's a better fit, corrective in nature, or again, that gap adjustment related to any grant revenues. So within the general fund, our first item we have on there is to avoid any department overruns. Availability of goods is the second item we have on there. So you'll see the budget going downward in that instance. And then the items focused around correction. So those are any grant reappropriation, debt payments, fire admin to correct the final mill levy allocation, as well as keeping all of the fire mitigation under the fire department line item in the operating budget. Under the grant fund in the 2022 budget, you will see that this amount is the $62,066, and previously we had shown all of the ARPA funds. However, because the city receives the American Rescue Act plan funds upfront, the proper accounting is really to appropriate those when we have a designated use from council. So at this point, we have $300,000 between 2021 and 2022 related to housing innovation. Under the 2005 Parks, Open Space, and Trails Fund, in 2021, again, we are moving any wildfire watershed protection from parks and open space to the general fund. That way we are making sure that we keep that in an area that fits best. For reappropriations, this is a decrease here. So reappropriation projects has to do with Smart 160, park trail and rec improvements, the sand volleyball court, economic impact study, a small portion of that, the Silverton Street project, and pickleball courts. And then in the 2007 debt fund, this is really an effort related around transparency. So we're budgeting the revenue and the expense that come in from the 2005 quarter cent, and that transfer in and out where we make those debt payments on the GL. In the 2015 sales tax fund, which is used primarily for parks and multimodal purposes, this is a decrease here in the areas where the projects were not able to get fully completed and will be carried into 2022. So that includes Santa Rita Park, Art 32nd Street grade, Art Rank Park, to Demon Bridge, Camino Crossing, Midtown, and 32nd Street calming. And then the two remaining items under risk management and self-insurance. So we had some high claims, source of claims due to a property casualty incident in December. And so we do need to increase the expenditures on that particular fund in 21. And in self-insurance, we had some high claims in December as well. However, with the mitigation efforts in 2022 around our benefits, those efforts should really reduce the exposure and increasing claims in the self-insurance fund. So I'm going to move into 2022. For the 2022 amendment, similar concepts here, but really focused around grant revenues. So this includes new or reappropriation of grants and 2021 grant revenues. Restructuring, so with that grant fund that was created in 2022 budget process, the plan is really to try and isolate any of the governmental grant funds, and so some of the items are included in there as well. Operating efficiencies, so several items in this amendment are related to incentives for retention of employees in various departments, as well as some movement of employees for operational efficiency. And then again, many of those projects that were reduced from 2021 are really being reappropriated in 2022. And in this section, I'll go into detail about what some of those delays were. And in this instance, it will be, the budget will be increased upward. And then also includes any goods that could not be received in 21. And then the other section we have is previously appropriated or just an effort for better transparency. And so I'll walk you all through the 2022 amendments. So in the transportation fund, this is related to trying to isolate grant revenues between the governmental funds and the enterprise funds. So within that first amount there, that 4.1 million, there's some transit grant rollovers for fleet replacement, modifications to the FTA 5311, as well as the safe routes to school. And it's really kind of a gap adjustment there where we are isolating these in this particular enterprise fund instead of them being in the 2015 fund. So you'll see the expenditures following through there as well. So any dollar amounts where the grant revenue is isolated, you'll also see the expenditures. And so the project, in some cases, will show up in both places depending on what that cost share is. Additionally, so moving down here into the expenditure side of it, so we have some transit grant replacement, which is again a rollover. And then here we have operating efficiencies, which is really the sign-on retention bonus for transit drivers. And then also under operating efficiency, this is moving 2 full-time transit staff from customer service into transit. This item is really a correction. So for the interfund transfer, we have a cost allocation adjustment, a reduction of $33,289. Which actually is, you'll see later on, belongs towards the airport. In the general fund, we have a couple reappropriations or just a request. So we have the some dollar amounts around the IT director search, Maine Avenue planning process. And then again, those items, due to the availability of not receiving the equipment, were carried forward in the 2022 budget. Operating efficiencies, you'll see that amount reducing there by moving those 2 customer service positions into transit. Under capital projects, this relates to the grant funding for the 32nd Street sewer treatment pond. And so the items that are related to grant revenue will be moved into that grant fund, revenues and expenditures. In the airport fund, we have a operating efficiency for airport snow removal, which is a recruitment and retention program. And then this is the interfund transfer for that cost allocation adjustment. Debt service, similar to what we saw in the 2021 amendment, this item brings forward the budgeted revenue and expense for the debt service for the library in Florida Road, which is really the fund that we pay those debt payments out of. And then in the grant fund, again, this is related to until council has a determination for what those ARPA funds should be used for, that budget amount will be reduced until we can allocate it for particular projects, as well as the grant funding for the 32nd Street and grant funding for fire mitigation. Those two are both also being moved to the grant fund in 2022. Moving on to Parks, Open Space, and Trails Fund. These are all project reappropriations. So we will start off with the Smart 160. We had engineering services started in 2021, and we have an open purchase order for that particular item. For Park, Rec, and Trails improvements, supply and installation of the new playground equipment for Hillcrest Park. Again, that's a purchase order that we have existing. Sand volleyball courts, excuse me. The project is mostly complete. However, the volleyball sections still need to be installed, and so that will have to wait until the spring to complete the project. For the economic impact study, we need additional funds for the council presentation. And then for the Silverton Fence project, the full cost was $25,000, which City Council had appropriated. The survey work was done in 2021. However, the contractor could not start the fence in December. Pickleball courts, so the full cost of the project is $175,000. Design of the pickleball courts at 3 Springs were paused, and staff is looking into opportunities for access to the site. Plans are at 30% and at a point where that could resume when the 3 Springs project is ready. Remaining reappropriated funds will be used to plan and design the pickleball courts at Smith Complex at Fort Lewis College to meet community desires for the courts in the near future. For the 2015 Parks and Multimodal Amendment, again, on those that top section there where you'll see the gap adjustment, those are moving the revenues and expenditures to the transportation fund, since that is an enterprise fund. And then when we're looking at some of these park projects, so Santa Rita, the full cost was $580,000. The project is mostly complete. However, the contractor was unable to complete the plantings and final landscaping due to winter. Art 32nd Street, the project was delayed for a month to determine whether the trail could be rerouted around the cottonwood tree. Project was planned to go into 2022 as well, so the contractor could work through the winter months during low water flow in the Animas River. For Rank Park to Demon Bridge, the project is delayed because of a potential habitat disturbance with Mexican jumping mice. The city did apply for and is waiting for a permit from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to proceed. For the Camino Crossing, survey permissions held up design, so the 2022 carry forward amount for the project reappropriation needs to be increased because less was really spent in 2021. For Midtown, CDOT traffic study held up the design, so the reappropriation amount needs to increase because less was spent in 21 as well. And then for the 32nd Street calming, the carry forward from 21 includes $18,000 to pursue roundabouts and design at MAB's recommendation, but we're still under budget for that from the original amount. So it's our recommendation of the Budget and Strategic Plan Officer that the City Council by motion approve the budget resolutions amending the 2021 appropriations and the 2022 appropriations for the City of Durango. The amendments that will affect 2021 and 2022 budget is included and outlined in the resolution, and this does fall under financial excellence and transparency, and I can stop sharing my screen at this point.
Thank you, Devin. Are there questions or thoughts from the city councilors? So Devin, I wanted to say thank you, and I also wanted to point out that I'm thinking that on the pickleball court situation up at the Smith Complex at Fort Lewis, that we will probably be getting a recommendation from the Parks and Rec Board about their desire to do that. So I'm excited about that we're looking at options and trying to make that happen for our community members, and that's great. So Mayor Pro Tem Nosworthy.
Thank you to Devin all of the staff, Cynthia, Jose, and the whole team for preparing this. I'd like to say that you've gone over and beyond what's required of you, and I appreciate that in your effort to really be as transparent as possible and to really, as you mentioned, regain that trust in the fiscal process. And I just want to appreciate that and recognize the extent that you've gone beyond what you needed to do. And I also wanted to acknowledge that I'm thrilled to see that pickleball is being addressed. We've had so many people from the community ask about that. And I also look forward to seeing other developments coming up in Three Springs, particularly given all the development that may be taking place out there. So thank you for this. I'm so appreciative of your hard work.
Mr. Nycombe, you had your hand raised.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Baxter. I just wanted to clarify that we have presented the pickleball court scenario to the Parks and Rec Advisory Board at their February 9th meeting. We got head nods to proceed. Previously, we had talked to our city attorney, Mr. Nelson, about how we could transfer funding from the Three Springs project over to do design work and planning work over at Fort Lewis College for those pickleball courts. And we do not need to necessarily get council approval. We can do a scope change because they are like programs and like services. So I just wanted to clarify that you will not be receiving or seeing a recommendation from Pratt.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions by council?
I'll just say thank you to Devin and staff for all your hard work. And I love that the forward action, like when you see something that's, we're having to reappropriate, like the operating efficiencies, you guys are, taking forward steps and doing them right away. And so I appreciate that. And all the hard work you guys are putting in. So thank you.
Mr. Nelson, do we have a resolution number for this? You're on mute. Dirk, you're on mute, sorry.
Sorry about that. It's R 2022-8.
Thank you. Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll move to approve resolution R-2022-8.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? May we have a vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy?
Yes.
Councilor Buell?
Yes.
Councilor Bosmans?
Yes.
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Mayor Baxter?
Yes, thank you. That motion passes. We're on to 12.2, discussion and possible action concerning a resolution assigning the purchase and sale agreement to TWG for the Best Western Durango Inn and Suites located at 21382 Highway 160 and authorizing the city manager to execute the agreement.
Hi, Mayor and Council. I am pleased to present today Eva Henson, our housing manager, and Jennifer Lopez with Moxie, who's been the consultant on this project. I think this is some exciting news to bring to the council. It's been a long process and a great teamwork job. Also, I know Nicole Killian, who went on to go to the city of Bayfield, had a huge part in this. So I want to make sure that she also gets her thank you with that. It's been a pleasure to see this project continue to form, and I will pass it to Eva to do the presentation.
Thank you so much, Jose. That's exactly what I wanted to start with, was really just to give kudos and credit to all of the efforts and work that has really gotten this project to where we're at tonight. Certainly couldn't have done it without Nicole's hard work. Jen Lopez, your team, Dirk, our city attorney, and so many others that have gotten us here. And I'm fortunate to sort of take on the project now and move it into fruition. This is certainly one aspect and one component. There will be others, as TWG would take on this project. So really, I won't have a slide deck. We'll really kind of talk about a little bit about the next steps of what this entails with the contract assignment. In your packet tonight and in your materials, legal has drafted that contract of the assignment for the purchase and sale agreement. So that's the one critical component, And then of course the resolution that would allow that assignment to happen. In November of 2021, the city and TWG were able to negotiate with the hotel owners to extend both the due diligence process and the final closing of the property. This was primarily due to some constraints and timelines around those due diligence and making sure all of those sort of happened. And so the due diligence was extended from November 22nd, 2021 to February 22nd, 2022. The final closing was extended from January 4th, 2022 to September 30th, 2022. And TWG financing contingency in that was also extended to May 1st, 2022. The contract deadlines are approaching for due diligence and financial contingencies, including the city to assign the contract to TWG Acquisitions LLC by February 22nd. TWG will then have 3 months to finalize financial feasibility and move towards a closing. The team is primarily focused on confirming the financial resources over the next 6 months. Currently, TWG plans to keep the existing 71 units and are proposing to add an additional 49 new units for a total of 120 affordable housing units and a total cost for acquisition and development of $30 million. To keep the units affordable, TWG will also be using a variety of funding sources to make this project pencil, as well as applying for the low-income housing tax credit program. The goal is to provide studios, 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms that would be affordable in the households earning less than 60% area median incomes. Rents would range from about $408 a month to about $1,104 a month, and that would be updated and analyzed annually depending on the AMI and the chart that comes out through HUD. The city's role after assignment will be ongoing, and staff will continue to monitor upcoming dates, various development and planning processes, and the financial components for this project. This project aligns with numerous city planning and long-range documents that address affordable housing, including the comprehensive plan, the 2018 Durango housing plan, and the city's 2021 city strategic plan to increase affordable housing options in our community. This motel conversion project also really demonstrates how the city can collaborate and partner to achieve affordable housing goals, and I believe sets an example that others will seek to model. Staff is recommending this evening that City Council approve the attached resolution for the assignment of the purchase and sale agreement to TWG Acquisitions LLC for the Best Western Durango Inn and Suites, and authorizing the city manager to execute the agreement. I'll open it up for City Council questions. Jen Lopez as well, our consultant with Project Moxie, is also on the call. She may want to chime in or certainly can help answer any questions that you might have tonight.
Thank you very much, Eva. Jen, did you want to say anything before council asks questions? Oh, okay. Are there any council questions or discussion items for this? Okay, well, I'll jump in and say this is very exciting. You all have put in a ton of work, and I really appreciate it. And the innovative concept that you're looking at here for us is wonderful. So, Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy.
I just want to thank you, and I want to go back to those early meetings in the late summer and autumn and recognize the staff. Nicole's not here, others were involved, Jen Lopez's efforts to get that retainer, the right of first refusal. I don't know the correct term on that, but for our ability to really work and to identify a developer. Some thought it couldn't be done, and I'm just so grateful that you persevered and were able to deliver on that. I think it's a partnership with a consulting services well spent. So I appreciate that. And Eva, thank you for this presentation. And we're delighted to have you on board and look forward to many more discussions about affordable and attainable housing. Thank you.
Councilor Youssef.
I was just going to reiterate the exact same thing when you were looking for comments. Just a big, huge thank you to staff for all of your efforts, and Jen and team. Wonderful to see this moving forward for our community. So great.
Councilor Buell.
I just want to say how exciting it is tonight that we have 200 plus apartments coming on board, and then this keeps moving forward, and it's super exciting to see the strides we're making with housing in our community, because it is one of our focuses of this council for sure, and we've worked hard, and our staff is working hard and being so creative, and I think it's amazing, so thank you so much.
So Jen, I have to say you make me smile because I can see you bubbling over there. You're very excited about this. Mr. Nelson, do we have a resolution number?
Yes, we do. It's R 2022-9.
Wonderful. Are there any other comments by council? Would someone like to make a motion, please?
Sure. I'll make a motion to approve the resolution R22-9 for the assignment of the purchase and sale agreement to TWG Acquisitions LLC for the Best Western Durango Inn and Suites, and authorizing the city manager to execute the agreement.
And I'll second.
Great. Is there any further discussion by council? All right, may we have a vote, please?
Councilor Buell?
Yes.
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Councilor Bosmans?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy?
Yes.
And Mayor Baxter?
Yes. Thank you very much, everyone. The motion passes. Appreciate it. On to 12.3, discussion and possible action concerning a resolution assigning the City of Durango private activity bond state allocation to Colorado Housing and Finance Authority to support the financing of the Best Western Motel conversion for potential housing purposes.
Mayor and Council, I'll pass it right back to Eva for the presentation.
Thank you. Again, no slide deck here. I don't think one's probably needed. But as TWG Acquisitions LLC works through securing funding and various components to acquire and rehabilitate the Best Western Durango Inn and Suites Motel for affordable housing purposes, they have requested the city assign 2022 and 2021 PAB allocations to the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority, also known as CHAPA, to support the motel conversion project. PABs are tax-exempt bonds that can be issued for specific purposes, including the provision of low-income housing and economic development. The PAB allocation authorizes an issuance of bonds via CHAFA for private sector projects that meet a public purpose as defined in the Internal Revenue Code. As the resolution outlines in your packet this evening, for 2022, the city's private activity bond allocation is $1,054,581. The 2021 private activity bonds that were carried forward by council and by resolution were in the amount of $1,059,415. This project aligns with the numerous city planning and long-range documents, again, that address affordable housing, including the comprehensive plan, the Durango housing plan, and the city's strategic plan to, again, increase affordable housing options and the variety of unit types within our community. Staff is recommending City Council approve the attached resolution concerning the city's 2022 and 2021 private activity bond allocation pursuant to the Colorado Private Activity Bond Ceiling Allocation Act, and providing for a transfer of such allocations to the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority, and authorize the mayor to execute any additional supporting documentation. There are a few that'll be needed for this.
I'll bring 2 pens instead of one.
Perfect. You'll need some ink. And so I'll open it up for council questions. And again, Jen is here as well with Project Moxie. And this is really another, tool in the toolbox for TWG as they work through some of their financial complexities to make this deal happen. And so we couldn't have done it without Jen and her team and staff's work on this, as well as the variety of legal eyes that helped with this to get us here tonight.
Thank you, Eva. Are there any questions or discussion items for council on this topic? So, well, I just want to say that the year that Durango qualified for private activity bonds, I believe was 2018 or 2019, I can't remember which, and council approved the use of that first round of bonds for the Tamarind Square in order to keep it as senior low-income housing with approximately 64 units, and that was really exciting. So I'm just very, very happy that the federal and state governments and everybody involved in however this money comes to us allow us to do private activity bonds to promote these kind of developments for our community members to make things more affordable. So thank you very much for all your work. Any other comments? No? All right, is this resolution 2022-10?
Yes, it is.
Great. Do we have a motion on that?
I'll move to approve resolution R-2022-10.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? We have a vote, please.
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Councilor Buell?
Yes.
Councilor Bosmans?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy?
Yes.
Mayor Baxter?
Yes, that motion passes. Thank you. So now we are on to 12.4, discussion and possible action regarding lodger's tax, arts and culture revenue allocation to the Durango Creative District.
Mayor and Council, I am here to introduce Tommy Crosby in our Community Development Department to take the lead on this presentation. Tommy?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Councilors. Tommy Crosby with the Community Development Department. I'm the Economic Opportunity Coordinator. I'm also the staff liaison to the Creative Economy Commission, and I'm here tonight to present the outcomes of a CEC vote, a Creative Economy Commission vote, regarding the use of some of the lodger's tax, arts and culture fund revenue. The CEC is recommending that council approve a request from the Durango Creative District for $75,000 of the total available revenue from the lodger's tax, arts and culture fund in 2022. Regarding this request, I want to share a few key points of what was presented to the Creative Economy Commission, and you can find supporting documentation in your council packet tonight. Firstly, the DCD has communicated to the CEC that the funding will support DCD programs, events, and projects. Second, the CEC feels that the DCD is an instrumental partner in the advocacy and deployment of the lodger's tax, arts and culture funding. And third, with expanded capacity via the hiring of a full-time executive director, the DCD is working towards becoming a more financially independent organization. The DCD has received funding from the general fund in 2020 and 2021, funding to support and expand their efforts to nurture local arts and culture is now proposed to come from the 14% of lodger's tax designated for arts and culture efforts. This lodger's tax funding will be spent on projects, programs, and events such as Durango Art Brigade, Durango Art Market, an event with the Colorado Poet Laureate here in Durango, and Regional Creative District Coordination, among other programs. Providing this funding for the DCD is aligned with the city's strategic plan goal of enhanced livability and sense of place. Specifically, the objective of supporting the Durango Creative Districts and the Art Brigade's efforts to help with economic recovery. The CEC and DCD have been discussing a collaborative effort to assist community arts organizations and initiatives in preparing requests for funding from the Lodger's Tax Arts and Culture Fund. This partnership will assist in vetting, reviewing, and evaluating funding proposals and recommendations for lodger's tax revenue, while also leveraging existing funding available to arts and culture organizations already here in Durango. Releasing this current funding request to the DCD will allow the CEC and DCD to focus on operationalizing effective programs around the Lodgers Tax Arts and Culture Fund in alignment with council direction for that revenue. Lastly, the DCD interim executive director and current DCD board chair have communicated that this funding plan will allow the DCD to move forward with a variety of projects and events and fill the vacant executive director position. Filling this vacancy and increasing hours to a full-time position will allow a greater focus on making the DCD financially self-sufficient while also offering robust support to local arts organizations. The CEC has voted in favor of funding the DCD. Members of the CEC that had a conflict of interest pertaining to the DCD recused themselves from that vote. Following council's guidance via the recently adopted lodgers tax policy, the CEC feels strongly that the DCD is a key strategic partner in strengthening and diversifying Durango's creative economy. The CEC finds that this request is in alignment with the lodgers tax policy, supports the city's strategic plan, and will be a positive contribution to Durango's creative economy. With that, the CEC is recommending that City Council move forward with the release of $75,000 from the Lodgers Tax Arts and Culture Fund to support the DCD. An official motion and vote by council on this recommendation would be appreciated. Thank you, and also we do have in attendance tonight the DCD board chair and interim executive director to field possible questions.
Thank you very much, Tommy. I just want to compliment you on how well you dealt with the DCD and CEC issues. I could not have done that, so I truly appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Council, do you have any questions or comments for this topic? Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy.
Yes, thank you. I have a couple of questions. First of all, the last time we heard from the DCD, they were interested in funding for a grant writer, and they talked to all of us about the importance of that. We had asked, could that not be done on staff? And they said, no, they really needed a dedicated grant writer. And that, they talked about the ability to leverage, 10 plus times. So that's not in this request. I'm wondering how that's going to be addressed. First of all, that's one of my first questions.
Good question, and we recognize that via the recently adopted lodgers tax policy, that's in that policy. We're not addressing that in this specific request, but we do recognize that that could absolutely be part of future conversations to help strengthen the DCD's kind of financial independence. But I think the priority right now is wanting to focus on ensuring that the DCD has program, event, and project funding for 2022.
If I may continue, on the budget of the $75,000, how much is directly attributable to a demonstrated project that we will see? Because I kind of got a guess of around 50,000, but I wasn't clear.
Sure, so I believe in page 223 of the meeting packet, you'll find the DCD budget. And there is a section for line item by line item that lists things like the Spark Series Arts and Culture Workshops, the Durango Art Brigade, Durango Art Market, special community events such as the Colorado Poet Laureate coming to Durango. So those will be events that you'll have a direct result of. You'll actually be seeing tangible events or projects here in Durango. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think if I add it up correctly, if I have everything, I see about 10, 20, 30, 42, 46,000 attributable to programs. So then is it safe to assume that the other remaining money is going to go to administration or salaries?
So the total projects and events budget all tallied up is $81,000. That's for existing projects and programs, as well as project and placement programs, which are funds specifically for growing out the DCD's current programming that does exist. So hopefully expanding that into projects and programs that we haven't seen in 2021, but hopefully they will be implemented in 2022.
So it does sound like there'll be some administration costs with that in this budget. Two more questions. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. You know, you mentioned it it's mentioned in the scope of work, but not in any specific way. It talks about support celebrations that include diverse cultural groups. But I really see the role of the Durango Creative District about really promoting the diversity that exists within this community and celebrating that. And I didn't see any of that in the budget request. And I would certainly, if there is not everything is spent on administration, would love to see that. And then the other item I would say is the real need to have a diverse influence on the direction of the DCD, both seeking diverse artists, diverse perspectives, diverse backgrounds. And I'm interested in hearing about the DCD's commitment to that.
Sure, so that might be a question that's a little better suited towards the members of the DCD that are online tonight. One thing that I will name is if you haven't reviewed the DCD's cultural plan, it is a very extensive and exhaustive document that does outline a lot of those points that you did bring up. And in the second item that was attached to tonight's meeting packet for the DCD is their 2022 work plan. And if you go down to item J, there are some items that are specifically DEIA focused, such as ensuring a board and staff DEIA training, continued outreach to BIPOC creatives in our community, engaging them specifically with the DCD, and specifically recognizing that there is no BIPOC representation within the board or staff of the DCD, and they're intentionally recruiting community BIPOC creatives to join boards and committees with the DCD. That's all I can personally speak to, but if Charles or Susan does have additional comment and would like to speak to Councilor Noseworthy's questions, now would be a good time maybe to raise your hand and we can bring you on as a speaker.
Charles is with us already, so if he would like to.
Sure.
Great.
The first one is about the budget. Councilor Noseworthy is, in fact, there's not administrative costs in the projects and events budget. And so it was specifically kind of responding to council, what we understood council was interested in and concerned about the DCD revisited budget to make certain that any allocations would be geared specifically towards projects and events. So the budget reflects that. In terms of DEI, the DCD board has recognized the need to address diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in the future in terms of art and in terms of artists being represented as well as board representation, and has put forward a resolution to engage in DEI training for all existing board members and any new board members as part of the onboarding and continued onboarding process. So that's, I don't know if that addresses specifically what you're talking about. One of the great things about art, and I think the great thing about the potential for lodger's tax, is that there's going to be an opportunity to open up opportunities for artists from all walks of life, I hope, in our community. So,
Susan, did you want to add to that? No? Okay.
No, I think he covered it. Thanks, Charles.
And could I just thank you, Charles, for addressing my question, and Tommy for addressing my questions, and thank you, Charles, for addressing those. And also thank you for in this most recent history of agreeing to serve another year as president.
Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity to counsel. You all have you got a lot of pages to read, and so to include us in the conversation is greatly appreciated.
Councilor Buell, you did have your hand raised. Did you want to say something?
Yes, I'll jump in. As the CEC council liaison, I was kind of integral in, looking at this and a part of these meetings. I want to reiterate that typically in the past, council has funded the DCD through the general fund. Then when that proposal came through, we didn't do it through the general fund because of the lodger's tax coming out. I think that there's certain things that we look at that are important to Durango and to like our sense of place and our enhanced livability. And the DCD and what they do for Durango is they essentially take, they're able to implement what the Creative Economy Commission, wants in a much more focused and stronger way. And so I think that this money going towards, supporting the art brigades efforts with economic development, fund, like it aligns with our comprehensive plan and different projects like the Spark Series Arts and the Creative Economy discussions and their efforts related to the lodger's tax. It just makes sense. And so just like when we were discussing the contract with Visit Durango earlier and how this is, it's a 1 year ask. We're not, allocating funds forever, and we can see and evaluate, like, we look at in our packet, they list, they have their scope of work for the city of Durango. And with this $75,000, do they successfully do this? Do we see that, like you're concerned about, Barbara, with the DEI accessibility and training and programs, like are they successful with implementing that? And if they are, and they're doing what we want as counselors in the city, and then I think it's a great way for the city to support them. And then if they're not, then we work with them to make it better. And is it a grant rider that we should be funding that can be separate in future years? Or do they use this money and leverage more grant funds, and it's even better? And so, I'm excited for what the DCD does for our community and what they could keep helping us with. So thanks, Charles and Susan. Councilor Youssef.
Yeah, well, I just, I'm really very hopeful that this is something that council will consider passing. I'm really happy to see it on an agenda. I'm happy to have this discussion. I feel like it's been a kind of a long road in getting here. I mean, literally, it just seems like it's been so many different steps that we've taken as a community, getting the creative district formed. That was a big step in and of itself. The passage of the lodger's tax, and now here we are, and the Creative Economy Commission is recognizing the strategic partnership that the Durango Creative District will provide for our community to help us reinvent, reinvigorate, infuse new energy, just to promote that creative side of our community that we desperately need to get a little bit better balance with. We've talked about it for years, the imbalances we have, and certainly we have underutilized our creative economy, and I'm looking forward to providing this type of support for an organization that I think can be the umbrella and the needed organization that we can turn to help us bring it all together. And I'm just happy to see us here at this point, and I hope that we all are encouraged to support this and support the CEC recommendation. I appreciate their hard work and support and the advocacy for our arts and culture in our organization, and I thank the DCD for being here.
I would echo all those sentiments, and I appreciate the idea that one of the things we talked about the lodger's tax money was to help provide, if you will, seed money to groups to get off the ground and get running and then be able to support themselves. And I see this as a natural progression in that desire to do so, and not as a long-term commitment year after year after year to support the payroll costs of an organization. So I see this as a springboard for them, and I'm very excited about it. I love the idea that our arts and culture will be expanding and including more people and more diverse viewpoints. So thank you very much. Any other comments, councilors? All righty then, do we have a motion?
I can make the motion, right? Even though I'm the council liaison?
Yes.
Okay, great. Just making sure. I was like,
Make the motion.
that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure before I did. Okay. I'll move to approve the proposal from the Creative Economy Commission to allocate $75,000 in funding for the Durango Creative District, subject to the conditions discussed at this council meeting and any further direction from council about specific goals for this particular funding.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All right, may we have a vote, please?
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Councilor Buell?
Yes.
Councilor Bosmans?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Noseworthy?
Yes.
Mayor Baxter?
Yes, and that motion passes. Thank you all very much. We're on to item number 13, which is council reports and actions, including liaison reports. Do any councilors have reports they'd like to make? Councilor Bosmans.
Thank you. I'll do the Parks and Rec Advisory Board meeting of February 9th. We discussed a economic impact study, and the recommendation was made to do very short financial reviews for capital improvement projects. There will be a recommendation to continue the process for reauthorization of the 2005 quarter cent tax. There is also the decision or the recommendation by the board to approve the Twin Buttes Class 1 e-bike motion. That was part of our joint meeting. And there was also a motion that will come to us, or a recommendation to rescind an ordinance applying to HB 1171 state law and definition of e-bikes, allowing e-bikes on natural service trails. And the last one is the pickleball courts that was already discussed. And actually, while I'm at it, I'm going to just add two other meetings. One is the regional broadband meeting, which was an update. That was on February 10th, which is an update from all the different regions and communities on what they do for the last mile and the middle mile broadband connectivity. And on the COG retreat, which was on February 14th, the discussion was focused around priorities, goals, projects, and then next steps for the closer cooperation with Region 9. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilor Buell.
Can I ask a quick question on Councilor Bosman's report?
Sure.
Sorry, I just wanted to make sure, did I hear you correctly in saying, Councilor Bosman's, that the Parks and Rec Board recommended e-bikes on natural surface trails? I don't know. You're on mute.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So there was a joint meeting between the Parks and Rec Multimodal and National Lands. And one of the motions that was made was approving Class 1 e-bikes on Twin Buttes. And then the boards were going to make their do the voting in their individual board meetings. And that was done because at least one board didn't have a quorum during that joint meeting. So that was the topic that was discussed during the Parks and Rec Advisory Board, and that was approved. But there was another motion made to rescind an ordinance 0218-25 and apply HB 1171 state law and definitions on e-bikes, and then specifying that it includes Class 1 e-bikes. And that motion passed. So, and I'm just trying to remember if that was if I'm using the correct language, because I think it was the motion that passed and not a recommendation that's coming to us. So we'll see from that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Buell.
Yes, so I did have one meeting. Before I jump into the Salt Fab meeting though, I wanted to say I was kind of overwhelmed today with the talent and creativity that we saw tonight with Scott and Eva and Devin. And I think that all the staff is astounding, and I'm so excited for what we have coming up in the city of Durango. We've had a ton of great and positive emails as well about these three and more of the staff. And it just shows how much good work we're doing. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that real quick. Okay, so Salt Fab, I had that meeting on February 7th. We got some updates on 10-year forecasting for the water fund and the sewer fund. And so making progress on that. Jared Biggs did a great job in his new role there. And so it kind of flowed well. We had some discussion and recommendation for the capital reserve policy for the water fund and the sewer fund as well. We have a RFP coming, or it's out actually, for municipal advisory and investment advisory services. Jasper with the Salt Fab board is going to sit on kind of the interview process for that. Devin reviewed some KPI methodology, and we got an application and how that's getting better and progressing. And so that was exciting. And then we talked about the enterprise fund balance policy for the trash and recycle fund and the transportation services fund. And then as well discussed our upcoming study session that we have, where we're going to talk about Salt Fab and kind of council goals with where that board is going and what we want to see coming out of them in the future. That was my only meeting. I actually did go to the Alliance meeting, Kim. I knew that you were on vacation for, and I did the city update. Thankful for Tommy and his updates that he gave us. So I was able to kind of fill in, and I'm sure you listened to it, and we'll give the update, but there's a lot of great stuff there as well. So yeah, there you go. That's all I have.
Thank you very much, Jessica, for doing that. I really appreciate it. And you're absolutely right. Tommy and the crew are lifesavers for those kind of things.
Yes.
Councilor Mayor Pro Tem Nosworthy, you're on mute.
I mentioned this earlier in the study session, but I wanted to mention it again during the city council meeting, just so if anyone's listening, they're aware of it. So the IAB, the Infrastructure Advisory Board, did meet, and we were tasked by council to look at it, what's the appropriate rates for water that will address the revenue collection that exceeds our anticipated expenditures, including our capital projects. So that meeting took place. We only had 3 out of the 5 members there. We had a wonderful, robust discussion, and I will say that is, it's a pleasure to serve on that committee because they are the advisory board. They really do bring variety of perspectives to the table and push back on them and kind of pressure cook them. And I think in the end, you get a good product. What we did leave it is they want to come back on February 22nd and explore a variety of options to bring to council. So I brought it under new business. We will be adding, it's my understanding, that to the study session on March 2nd, which will be looking at their recommendations, and then also possibly that same evening looking to take the first steps of any actions on a water rate reduction in revenue collection at this point. And I remind you that we are looking at a $17 million reserve fund and bringing that into a more of a anticipation of what Allison believes we're going to need, but also not having an excessive fund balance. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Youssef, did you? Yes.
Sorry, I'm like playing between my hand and my mute. Just an update on the library board. We had, as you know, they put the RFP out for financial review for the library district proposal. They had one organization respond, despite the fact that it was nationwide, and they did have 12 people look at it. But they have selected this organization as an organization out of Ketchum, Idaho, and it's an Idaho-based woman-owned company that helps local governments with cost-effective access to high-quality professional services. The owners of this organization will be working on getting us a comprehensive review of the library finances, which will require a lot of gathering of information, not just internal to the library, but also to the entire community. They are hoping to have a report back to us within 50 days for a financial analyst and an actual product that they will deliver to us at the end of that time. So we are moving forward in that regard. I just wanted to give you that quick update.
Excellent, thank you. So let's see, what do I have here? Oh, Regional Housing Alliance. At our last meeting, I was not in attendance, but I did get a report back from there. The board did vote to offer Moxie and Capelli Group a contract for managing the RHA. And that's in process. That's all being worked out. And the Southwest COG would remain as the administrator for the time being, because we want the Moxie Capelli groups to be able to focus on their work, which is getting units on the ground in an affordable manner so that our workforce housing can be built. So that's where we sit with that. The Natural Lands Preservation Board did, as Councilor Bosman's mentioned, meet with the Multimodal Board and the Parks and Rec Advisory Board to discuss the survey and results from the e-bike trial at Twin Buttes. I think there was a little bit of confusion because a motion was made to approve e-bikes on the Twin Buttes Trail, but that motion got tabled, as Councilor Bosman said, because not everybody had a quorum there to make a vote. And it was a little weird because, like, the Parks and Rec Board has more members than the Natural Lands Board and more members than the Multimodal Board. So they just kind of decided maybe that wasn't the right way to do it. And to have each board go back and have a conversation about what they would like to recommend. But I also believe that they agreed to set up a subcommittee of members of each board to have a conversation. And that hasn't happened yet. And yet the Parks and Rec Board has already voted to make a recommendation. And so the chair of the Natural Lands Board called me to talk to me about that because they were confused because this was moving forward more quickly than they thought they were going to have a subcommittee conversation about it and include everybody. So I think we will be hearing more from the Natural Lands Board about what their recommendations might be and a request from them to clarify kind of who has authority over the soft surface trails and what happens there. So I wanted to let council know, because this all coincides with our boards and commissions conversations, how we're trying to clear up those relationships. So I wanted to make sure that that was out there, and possibly if Amy is available to make a note to get that into our packet, that kind of conversation into our packet for the council's conversation, that would be great. I'm pretty sure the Natural Lands Board will be making a recommendation about that, but I wanted to make sure we were ahead of that and didn't lose that sight of that. Also, as all of you know, the last URA meeting was very exciting because we approved going forward with the North Main Gateway URA plan. So that's incredibly exciting. Any other comments or suggestions? Okay. Well, I will now adjourn this meeting. Thank you everyone so much.